it is a vulnerable process. I think people kind of say, yeah, I'm going to be an author. And they get out there and they get all excited, but you're putting your heart on a page. And if somebody comes back and says, I don't get it, or that didn't work for me, oh, that hurts. So you have to like have some tough skin. You have to be willing to take that feedback.
Melanie Johnson here. I'm co-owner of Elite Online Publishing. Welcome to the Elite Publishing Podcast, where we talk everything books, book writing, book publishing, book marketing. And we have Lyndsay Dowd with us today. She is not just in one book, she's written one book, and she's been in a compilation book as well that just came out. Thanks, Lyndsay, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Melanie.
So tell me about your first book. Why did you write your first book? Your first book is called Top Down Culture. Tell me a little bit about why you wrote it and how that came about.
Yeah, I don't think when I started off on my entrepreneurial journey, I really had big intentions to write a book. It wasn't something that was kind of, in the back of my mind brewing like many people are, but I was approached by my publisher and they were like, "You have a voice and people need to hear this and we want to help you bring it to life." And I was kind of like, "Oh, well, I do talk a lot. I have a lot to say. So, yeah, this might not be a bad idea." And it was a total joy to create it, and it's been a fascinating ride. I just never planned on being an author, and now a two-time author is pretty freaking nice. So I'm stoked about it.
So what would you say has happened to you after you published your first book? What happened to you because of your book? How did you use it for your business and
Yeah.
launching your career? Because it was kind of happening at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You were starting a new career, a new business, and you had the book.
Yeah, I think it really enhanced my credibility,
Mhm.
and it became extremely useful when I do keynotes. So very often someone will hire me for a keynote and I like a keynote to last. And most speakers will tell you get that hour or that 45 minutes with their audience and then it's over. And maybe they
Yeah.
talk about you for a little while and then a week or so it's gone. So that book offers a little bit more permanence and a little bit more longevity. And so I like when I can incorporate the book into my fee or I can sell the books on site. But either way, it gives a little more permanence and a little more connection with the audience. I love signing books for people and talking to them and hearing from them, what resonated with them in the keynote. And a lot of what I do in the keynote is in the book. So it's the one thing people say, and I take this as the biggest compliment is, Lyndsay, I could hear you like you were sitting next to me. It was your voice. It was so clear. And that I love. So I think anybody that would read it after they've heard me or seen any of my
Yeah.
content, they'd be like, yeah, no, that's her. That's her voice. They're her stories.
That's your voice. Well, I
So
always
yeah,
tell
but
people your speech is your book and your book is your speech. If you have a keynote
yes.
speak, that's the start of your book right there. And
Yeah.
vice versa. If you have your book, you're not going to spew out your whole book on a speech, but you've got
No.
parts of it. And that's what makes them want the book because they're hearing a
Yeah,
little bit of that and they're like, oh, I want more. Tell us a
that's
little
right.
bit about how, just a couple ways that maybe you've incorporated your book into speaker fees. We get asked this as publishers all the time, like, they're just writing,
Yeah.
they're starting their speaking career. They're like, "Well, how do I use my book in their speaker fee?" So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I mean, I look at what the book is selling for, and if we're having 100 people, I incorporate 100 copies into the fee, and usually, I think all of my clients have loved it, and it adds some extra cachet when you are a speaker and you've been published and you are an author. And oh, by the way, anyone thinking about writing a book, once you are an author, no one can take that away from you. That is some serious street cred. So when you come into the room as a published author, and better yet, a
Yeah.
bestseller, then, people are going to pay attention a little more.
Mhm.
And I think it's so interesting because in the corporate world, I knew very few authors. I mean, we'd have the keynote speakers that would come in with their books, or I had a few friends that wrote children's books, but I didn't have a ton of author friends. I had some high school friends that have become authors, but they're like
Yeah.
novels. And once I became an entrepreneur, man, I could swing a cat and there's authors all over the place and I love it. And I have like a stack of 30 books here and they're all for my friends, which is just so incredible to me. And it's a variety of topics, but I love seeing when someone has enough to say that they take the time and care to put it into a thoughtful book. It doesn't have to be a literary tome. It doesn't have to be, something really difficult. But when it's from your heart and when it's subject you understand really well,
Yeah.
it's
And
fantastic.
it does elevate you, like you say, it's like you're now part of a new club. Like, "Oh, I'm in the
Yes.
author club, and this is different," and you feel different when you
Yeah.
walk into the room as a speaker having that book versus not having that book. And
Right.
so you're incorporating it right into the fee, like, "Okay, this is how much my books cost me, let me charge X amount
Well, it
more."
depends. There's that, or this is my fee. You're also going to pay for travel. And then I'm happy to bring books and I can sell them
Right.
there. And so either works.
Mhm.
I like it when they pay for my books. That's more
Yeah.
fun. But, I offer some flexibility. And I think people like when they have some decisions that they can make.
Yeah. So tell me, after doing your first book all yourself, you decided to do a
Yep.
compilation book. And I'll just say, from a publisher standpoint, usually we see the reverse more often. They do a
Yeah.
compilation book and then they're like, now I want to have my own book. So what took you from doing your own to doing a compilation book?
So this anthology, there's a woman named Brenda Dempsey who's the publisher out of Scotland, and she found me on LinkedIn, which is where I find my clients. It's where I find a lot of my
Yeah.
friends. It's where I found the communities I'm a part of. And she found me and we had a Zoom and she said, I love your story. I'm writing this book about leadership and it's all kinds of leadership, not just
Yeah.
business. I mean, there are people that work with children, there's people that work with trauma, all different kinds, and it's an international book. So there are authors from the UAE, from,
Nice.
UK, from obviously the US, really everywhere. And she just said, she's like, I need your voice in this book. And so I have a big old chapter that's just mine. It's my story. And I was really lucky to have two women that I respect deeply write some forewords for the book. And that was really special.
Yeah.
So we just did an online launch yesterday and there's 22 authors in that book. And, we're all very different, but there's one common thread, and that is we're trying to raise the voices of women. We're trying to amplify our stories and our power. And it's a delight to be a part of.
And the one advantage of this fiction book or anthology book is that you've got women from all over the world, so it broadens your audience. So
Yeah.
when you're doing that, it's great to have a book on your own. We're working on a anthology book for the International Chamber of, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden your voice is being introduced to everybody else and their platform and their fans
Yes.
and their people. So it does
Yeah.
have that advantage to it. Talk about the your writing style, because especially with your
True.
first book, so many people get stuck. That's the hardest way. We do a VIP book
Yeah.
creation day that people get up to 10,000 words written in a day and their book all
Mhm.
outlined and all of that. But they're like, I just have these ideas. I've written here, I've written
Yeah.
again 2 years later, and it's just all over the place. So how did you discipline yourself to get your book written? And you did it in a pretty quick amount of time, it sounds
Yes. I mean, that was the
like.
unique thing about my publisher that I really liked. The whole process from beginning to end was 90 days, and that's remarkable. But they did it in a style I absolutely loved. So, as you know, I'm a talker. So, what we did was we created the table of contents and the publisher interviewed me for each chapter. So it was just like a giant
Yeah.
podcast. And so it wasn't all at once either. We would do 2 or 3 chapters each week. And then the ghostwriter would transcribe everything and then hand it back to me. Now, the first draft was a disaster because it sounded exactly like how I speak. And I thought they were going to make me sound a lot smarter. And I was a little horrified. And they're like, no, no, don't worry. They're just getting used to your voice. And I was like, all right. And then it started to really groove and it got really, really great. And, there were times where we would complete a chapter and I'd be like, I forgot something I want to add. Let's go back. I want
Yeah.
to add to it. But once the structure of the book was done and the bulk of the content was done, we go back and forth on the editing. And that process is long. I mean, 90 days is not long, but that process can be tedious
Yeah.
because there are things you're going to miss. And I don't care how many times you read something, your eyes miss stuff. And it really, the best advice I can give is get some people to read it.
Yeah.
Ask them, ask the favor, say, hey, would you please read this and take some notes? And it is a vulnerable
Yeah.
process. I think people kind of say, yeah, I'm going to be an author. And they get out there and they get all excited, but you're putting your heart on a
Yeah.
page. And if somebody comes back and says, I don't get it, or that didn't work for me. Oh, that hurts. So you have to like have some tough skin. You have
Mhm.
to be willing to take that feedback. And I second guessed myself a lot. I mean, I was like, is this even good? Because I tell stories, I speak story.
Mhm.
And sometimes that could be perceived as simplistic. Now, my stories are used to illustrate concepts. So I knew what I was doing, but I didn't want it to sound like, I don't know, too easy. I wanted it to
Mm.
sound educated and
Yeah.
polished and, you know, have panache. And I hope it did that. I think it did, but I think the other thing is it's me. I mean, there is no question about it. It is my story. It is me.
Well, I always tell people the first draft is always ugly, right? It's you're like, "Ah," and then people get scared. We're like, "No, it's supposed to be ugly. It's okay. It's not supposed to be great the
Yeah.
first draft, and then we're gonna go back and then, and make
Yeah.
it better." Now, did the whole thing take why they were was the book actually published in 90 days or just the writing process
Yeah.
took?
No, the whole thing, and the part that I loved the most about that publisher was we focused on the marketing
Mhm.
first. So who are we writing
Yep.
to? And we got that voice really, really clear. Like we gave that person a name, we gave
Yeah.
them a bio. Like it was to remind me who I'm talking to keep
Yep.
the thread consistent throughout.
Mhm.
And the end was a lot of PR. So I went on TV, I did radio, I did a lot of podcasts and a lot of written press, and that was like a virtual book tour.
Mhm.
So it was fun. I really enjoy, but I love this. Like, this is really
Yeah.
fun for me. It's not fun for everybody, but for me, it was really fun. And I was on TV in Australia and Georgia and all over the place. And that I think was a really important part to the process for me.
Yeah, I think you do have to have a marketing plan in the first place, and then how you're gonna use your book afterwards. So you know, like, "Hey, I'm gonna use this for part of my speaking fee. Hey, I'm gonna go on these
Yeah.
different things," and we have noticed too with authors, it's great to do those tours. It doesn't necessarily move the needle for book sales. We even had an author that was on Good Morning America, and the needle didn't move very much. You sold 85
Mhm.
books on Good Morning America. That's kinda crazy, right? I mean, my background
Yeah.
is I used to own TV stations, in the 90s and early 2000s, and you would, millions of people, we sell tens of thousands of books, not just 80 books in one day. So that has changed a lot. And I love that it happened so fast for you and you were able to really get it. Did they give you proof copies? So did you approve a physical proof or was it just a digital proof that you got?
Everything was digital. I think in hindsight, the physical might have been nice to
Yeah.
have, but it was all digital. And I think where we spent the bulk of the time was once we got to the cover art. That was a lot harder than we thought it was going to be, or
Mhm.
I thought it was going to be. And it was a super collaborative, very artistic process, and I enjoyed it.
Cool. Now, did you do like a specific book launch? Did you have a book launch strategy when the book first came out to try and hit it to be bestseller? Or was it like it's out and then you're going to do the media tour?
We kind of did it's out, we're gonna do the media tour, and I certainly put it on all my socials. We created a few reels and like a
Video trailer,
so
maybe?
not like a speaker reel, but we took all of that press
Yeah.
and created a press reel about
Nice.
it. So it is out on all of my socials. It's certainly something I talk about a lot, and I think the thing that authors need to remember is you have to promote your book no matter how much you think you're done. You gotta keep coming back to it
Yeah.
because people forget, and not everybody sees your stuff all the time, and
True.
there's nobody that thinks about you more than you. So you've gotta, like, constantly stay in the forefront, constantly be talking about
I
it.
love that you say that. We preach that to our authors all the time. Your book is its own little business. So you can
Yeah.
do book signings throughout the year. You
Yes.
got to still promote it all the time.
Yeah.
So would you do
Yeah.
it again? Would you recommend for somebody else that to write a book?
Oh, yes. I think the advice that I got that I thought was brilliant was I thought because I'm a storyteller, I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of just gonna write a memoir of like all of my stories being a sales leader." And the guy who was advising me, he's like, "Dude, unless you're Oprah, nobody wants to read your life
Yeah.
story. So don't do that." And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. I needed to hear that because I thought that was normal and that would be really cool. And so, yeah, especially if it's a nonfiction book, you really want to figure out what is the angle that your subject matter needs to shine in.
Yeah, I always say do the money book first. You can incorporate your personal stories in there, but you're putting your flag in the sand, so to speak, to say, what do I want to speak about on stage? What do I want to be known as an expert at and have the credibility for? that people go, "Oh,
Yeah.
she's the leadership person," right? And then that
Yeah.
that is starts the whole cornerstone of your business when you're doing that. So
Yeah.
amazing. Well, tell people where they find you and get your book.
Please come check out my website at heartbeatforhire.com. You can see the links to the book there. You can also find all my socials and come connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super active over there and you'll see both of the books over there.
Terrific, and you can book her to speak too. So there you go.
Yes, yes, please
Yeah.
do.
And if
Melanie.
you're thinking about writing a book, reach out to us at eliteonlinepublishing.com. We are here to make you a bestseller and help tell your story. Keep writing, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.